Welcome into Behind the Line. I'm your host, Bryan Bridge. Today, we're not going to be taking a specific athlete and telling their story. We're doing this right after the Warriors versus Pistons game. If you're new to this podcast, welcome in. We're glad to have you. If you're somebody I know who's been, listening to this every single episode, welcome back. It's not the happiest of times right now in terms of a Warriors fan's life. But today, we're going to go over lineups, specific players, events that have happened in the past week and a half for the Warriors, and we're going to pump the brakes on overreacting. I might react more than somebody else, but that doesn't mean I'm overreacting. So let's get into it. First of all, I wanted to address the Draymond Green and Jordan Poole situation. They obviously have differing personalities, but what happened right before the season began, right before the preseason, I should say, was nothing to scoff at. The video, it changed everybody's minds on what it actually was. Other players came out about it and they were saying, don't overreact. It happens in every locker room. But that was a mean punch. Something was behind that punch. And so it might not be affecting their day-to-day right now. But when it comes time for Draymond to get some type of extension, we'll look more into it. We'll revisit it. And we'll see just how big the implications were from that. But like I said, we're doing this right after the Warriors were defeated by the Detroit Pistons. And so over the past week and a half, we saw the Warriors not necessarily dominate the Lakers, but they beat them in a defending champion type of way. We saw lineups that worked really well. We saw Steph, still in MVP form, and we'll get into that later. But, we had the Lakers. Then we had the Denver Nuggets. We lost that game by 5. Then we played a crazy game against the Kings. A loss against the Suns, a 29-point loss, nothing to scoff at. We beat the Heat, who we'll get into all the other NBA teams probably towards the end of the podcast, but they are not looking like themselves. And then we had a loss to the Hornets, and now a loss to the Detroit Pistons back to back. And something that I have noticed throughout those 7 games has been the inability to find a lineup that works super well. So that's why I'm going to go over literally everybody on our roster and point out their pros and cons of this season. So we'll start with the reigning Finals MVP, probably everybody's favorite player, Stephen Curry. And, Steph hasn't been an MVP candidate, in my opinion, simply because of our record. But he's playing like he was in that finals. One of the main reasons he probably wouldn't be considered an MVP candidate right now is because there are plenty of other players playing up to that same caliber, and their teams are actually winning, a.k.a. Giannis. But, Steph, I don't think we can really complain. Now, there was that game against Charlotte. He mentioned after the game that he probably shouldn't have dribbled that clock out so much and tried to play hero ball, which he rarely does. So I remember when I was sitting down and watching that, I kind of thought to myself, oh, he's going to pass it. Oh, he's going to pass it. He always passes it. But he was, dribble, and then 2 seconds left. Terrible shot from him. Even though for him, there are almost no terrible shots. And it kind of started to really make us doubt this team. But it all starts with Steph. And just looking at him, he's been good. So let's look at the other players. You got Draymond, who hasn't been playing terribly either. He's got the offense rolling whenever he's in the game. Whenever he's out of the game, you can tell that his presence is missed. His defense, same exact thing. But something I didn't mention when I was talking about Steph, and now I'll mention with Draymond, this team is not the same defensively. Whether or not, a team is making a ton of shots is not necessarily luck. There's a lot of skill put into it, but you can kind of shrug off a chucked up three that, goes in the basket. But we are fouling like nobody's business. And it's frustrating to watch because, we're going to talk a lot about the players that left, like Gary Payton. He fouled too, but it just feels like we're fouling so much more. I think, the Pistons tonight had 30 free throws or more. Probably more because of end of game tactics, but 30 free throws? I mean, that's a whole quarter's worth of points. Think about that. It's almost unfathomable. And that's not just a one-game instance. It's been several games now. And it's not just because the refs are picking on us. Maybe a tiny bit because we're the defending champs and, they might feel like they need to give the edge to the other team. But I'm watching it. Steph isn't as mobile as he was last year in terms of, swiping at a ball and making sure he doesn't get that contact on the defensive end. Draymond, he's doing the same thing. Jordan Poole, I'd say the same thing. Like I said for Steph, it just, if we're going to win games consistently, that needs to be a major point of emphasis. But I'm not the coach. Let's move on to Klay. He hasn't gone off. It hasn't been perfect. He's been the kind of player to pinpoint in terms of struggling. But I'm a Klay believer. And I loved his soundbite the other night when he didn't really roast Charles Barkley, but called him out and said, it hurts because Chuck says, he's not the same player. And Klay goes, no, duh. And I think that's the best response. He's been out for 2 years and, or I guess, 2 years. And of course he came back last season and he did contribute. I see a lot of comments. I play fantasy basketball. I see a lot of comments saying he was carried to a championship. Every single player plays a part. Even Andre Iguodala is playing a part right now, and he isn't even on the court. It's locker room stuff. Imagine a team of Steph. No. Steph is pretty good locker room wise as well. But imagine a team of like Draymond and KD without Steph and Klay. That would be totally different than what we saw, for 4 straight years or 3 straight years. Klay adds to that locker room appeal of, hey guys, we're good. We're defending champs. Let's just relax. But yeah, I'm getting bugged by all the Klay slander because he's been gone. He didn't play preseason. First of all, I don't know why. That should not have happened. He should have been playing preseason, in my opinion, but he didn't. So it is what it is. But right now, he is getting played out of his starting spot by Jordan Poole, and we'll get to Jordan in a second. But I think what Klay needs to focus on is not necessarily shooting the three. I see games here and there where he is obviously focusing more on driving to the basket and, dumping it off to Looney or somebody else. And that I love to see. It may not turn into a basket, but if Klay drives like that, it opens up so many more shooting opportunities for Steph and Jordan. Even Wiggins. We'll talk about Wiggins in a second here. But yeah, Klay, he just needs to keep going. He needs to find his rhythm again, but he'll find it. We're only 7 games into the season. He will find it. Let's move on. Let's talk about Wiggins next. Andrew Wiggins. Man, he has been a beast. Maybe not against the Pistons, but what I saw in the first 6 games of the season, I like. He was not the Finals MVP, but he is playing like the second best player. Sure, Jordan is getting all the buckets, getting all the highlights, but Andrew Wiggins, I mean, consistently grabbing 10 rebounds, getting 2 to 5 assists, and getting 20 points. That is all we need from him. Plus the defensive stats that don't even show up on the box score. I don't know if you can ask for any more from him. I really don't think Steph, Draymond, Wiggins, or Jordan are the problem. Do I think Klay is the problem? A little bit, but not to the point of losing, 4 out of 7 games. I don't think so. We'll get to the problem in a second. Let's talk about the last 2 most important people. We'll start with Kevon Looney, since he's a starter. He's been playing well, not as well as last playoffs, but I don't really know what you should expect from him. I mean, he's our rebounder, and he's been playing well. I don't know what else you can expect from him, so we're not going to place the blame on him either. I would like to see him gel with the younger core a little bit better, simply because Wiseman isn't, and we need a center that can gel with the other guys. I think his name is Anthony Lamb. He's not our guy. We need Looney and Wiseman to do something for us with that younger core. When all the starters are in, we might be down a few points, but it feels secure. Once that once that young core comes in, man, it gets sketchy. We'll get to there in a second. Let's talk about Jordan Poole. A lot of people thought that Draymond kind of rattled him and woke him up. In the game against the Lakers to start the season, he was really quiet. The next game, he was really quiet. But then he started to pick it up. And now, just against the Pistons, I believe he had 28 points or more. He's not terrible either. He needs to be in that second unit, though. That's what drove us to win the championship. The thing is, like I was mentioning, so many people are saying, replace Jordan Poole with Klay Thompson. So put Jordan Poole in that starting lineup, Klay go to the bench. But the issue with that is, if you put Klay on the second unit, who's the ball handler? Who is the decision maker? JP needs to be part of that second unit for that exact reason. It cannot be anybody else. Not Moody, not even Wiggins. It needs to be JP. So stop talking about lineups and switching them up. That's not going to happen. JP needs to come off the bench. And he's doing well, but he just needs to gel with the other players. And who are the other players? Well, it is not like last year. I think last year, we started off the season so well because we were just coming off a season where we lost in the play-in. And you have a little bit less attention when you do that. Granted, we still have Steph Curry. Okay. The attention is going to be there on him. But Nobody was expecting anything from Jordan Poole. Of course, not really from Andrew Wiggins. He didn't really do anything. If you're a Warriors fan, you remember that year with Kelly Oubre and Andrew Wiggins. We thought, oh my goodness, we have so much length. This is going to be amazing defensively. And it didn't really amount to anything. But then last year, Andrew Wiggins took that step. He was named an All-Star. I don't think he'll be named an All-Star this year. I don't see that happening. But I don't know. It just... It doesn't totally feel like that year where we lost in the play-in. But if we don't pick up the energy, it might turn into that. So anyways, let's not get too depressed here. Let's move on to, like I said, the rest of the roster. Starting with the first name I see here, PB&J, Patrick Baldwin Jr. He hasn't gotten squat diddly. He hasn't gotten any playing time. And he won't fix our season. But I want to know why. Why the freak is Ty Jerome getting playing time, getting, 10 to 15 minutes a game? Why is Jonathan Kuminga not getting minutes? I mean, I don't know what's going on in that locker room. I know why Iggy is not getting minutes. But we talk about our depth with our young core. Patrick Baldwin was totally a part of that. I don't know what's going on. I think that in the next week, if we don't see him in the roster, or he is in the roster, if we don't see him on the court playing decent minutes, I'm talking even just 5 minutes a game in meaningful minutes, then I'm going to start to question what Steve Kerr is thinking. Right now, I'm not totally, it's only been 7 games, but I want to see some Patrick Baldwin Jr. Next guy I see, Dante DiVincenzo. I wrote a few notes on him. He has been injured, the past 2 or 3 games. But even when he was playing, I think I wrote down that he seems like a good ball handler. He seems secure. But I doubt that he will get, if we make the playoffs at this point, I have no clue, but I doubt that he will get meaningful playoff minutes. Again, I think I wrote down that he'll be out of the rotation come March, come April. He's a great player. I loved him when he was in Milwaukee. I think he got traded to the Kings, or I think he left in free agency, but he wasn't amazing. But he's always known as, I think he's a national champion, but he's always been known as a pretty solid player. But with Jordan Poole, maybe that's what we need. We haven't won the past few games. He hasn't been in the lineup. Maybe I'm totally overlooking it, and it's just as simple as that DiVincenzo needs to come back. But I don't think that's the answer. Next guy, JaMychal Green. He's been actually a solid role player. He's another guy that fouls a lot. We can't be allowing their second unit to get points and get back in games, or even to pull ahead, because they're living at the free throw line. They're on the second unit, not talking about the Warriors. Other teams' players are on the second unit because they're not as good. Leave them be. If they're a 30% shooter from 3, let them go. If they're in the post and they're a point guard, back off. You don't need to get so aggressive and let them live at the line. Other than that, JaMychal Green has been solid on the boards. I think he will be a key player going down the stretch. But I don't know, man. We got to figure something out. Next guy, Iggy. I don't think we need to talk about him much. We paid him to be a player coach not to play, which I'm okay with. I don't think there's any problem with that. And now we come to someone I'm very confused by, Ty Jerome. What is he doing? What is he doing? I mean, he's not awful, but the broadcasters, Bob Fitzgerald and Kalena Azubuike, they're always like, JP and Ty Jerome have this nice chemistry right now. I don't see it. What are you guys talking about? From what I've seen, when Ty Jerome's on the floor, he gets the ball, dribbles a few times, gives it back, and that's it. Yeah, sure, he has probably like 15 points on the season. Oh, wow, great, yeah. Not what we need. He is not what we need. I think, last year, we didn't do much at the trade deadline. I don't think we did anything. Expect the Warriors to do something this season. It's not doing so hot. We'll talk about the Brooklyn Nets later, but we're not that bad. But it is not looking too good. Not to hate too much on Ty Jerome, but I had to. All right, next, Jonathan Kuminga. Storylines are out there saying he's frustrated, he's not getting time. Talking to Iguodala, who's trying to calm him down. Kuminga isn't a hateful player. I don't see that. He's very calm. Kind of an Andrew Wiggins-esque player. But, yeah, I don't know. He's just not... When he gets in the game... I'll bring this up right now, even though he's farther down on the list. He and Moses Moody were kind of pinned before this season as the two star players other than Jordan Poole in the Warriors' young core. Those two have completely different playing styles. Completely different from what I'm watching. When they are on the court together, Warriors basketball looks awful. Now, when Kuminga is in with the starting group, which they haven't done yet, which I'm upset about, when he's in with the starting group, he looks good. He can run. He's filling in for Andrew Wiggins almost. But Steve Kerr has been like, oh, yeah, Jonathan Kuminga's on the floor. Moses Moody has to be on the floor then. No, don't do that anymore, man. I think the last time we saw that was like the Kings game, and it was awful. Since then, Kuminga's been getting less and less minutes, thanks to Moses Moody. Thank you, Moses Moody, for making Kuminga look awful. Even though Moses Moody is kind of, I don't know. A lot of people in the media talk about how, oh, he's good. Like, he ain't bad. I don't know. I don't like his style. We need either a spot-up shooter or a big man. And Moody is kind of in between that. I don't think that's what we need. He is almost trying to be an Otto Porter Jr. style player who dribbles a lot more. And, he's a second-year player. And you know how many times I've seen him chuck up a three? Like, not even just a spot-up three, but like a step back. What are you doing, man? Kuminga's not getting minutes because of you. What? I understand. He's a more experienced player, probably. From what I can see, that is a little bit true, but he does not. Over these past 7 games, the Moses Moody and Kuminga experiment has not been working. Let's move on. Anthony Lamb. Not much to say here. He did play versus the Pistons just a little bit, and he was okay. He's not going to give you more than 5 points in a given night. But he might break a playoff rotation if need be. He's solid, but not spectacular. I don't know how else to put it. Let's move on. I already talked about Moses Moody. Not going to talk about him again. We got Ryan Rollins. He hasn't been getting any playing time either. He did get a little bit, I think, like second or third game of the season. But I don't see him cracking the rotation at all this year. And that's okay. I don't think anybody really expected anything from him. But let's move on to James Wiseman, our last player on this roster. What to say about Wiseman? Well, he's tall. He can shoot free throws at a decent rate. He can rebound sometimes. He is not a second overall pick. I think it was Darko Milicic who was drafted to the Pistons and didn't do squat and still won a championship. And, I talk about how the Clay slander is going on right now, so I won't hate on Darko too much, but he was pretty much a bench rider. And he was, I think, a second overall pick or even first. Can't remember right now. Isn't coming to mind, but James Wiseman isn't as bad as him. But he's not given the second unit what we need. I keep talking about what the Warriors need, and of course what they need is a win, but what James Wiseman needs to do is, honestly, I wouldn't be mad with him picking and popping more. Because, so what that means is, you pick and roll, the screen stays at the 3-point line. From what I've seen, he always rolls. But if he stays at the 3, we can get a lot more backdoor cuts, and that's not happening right now. That's something else I've noticed. We're shooting a lot more threes, I feel like, than last year. Don't know how to fix that other than finding backdoor cuts. How do you find backdoor cuts? Maybe have a 5, a center that can space the floor, which James Wiseman can do, but he hasn't been. I feel like he and Kuminga are just not as confident as they were. Is that because, during the playoffs we didn't give him enough minutes? Obviously Wiseman was injured, but is that because their confidence was just shot? I don't know. But I think there are a lot of positives also to look at. We're not the worst team in the league. We're not the Lakers. Woohoo! I am so happy about the Lakers. So happy. I didn't actually hate the Lakers when they had Kobe, simply because the Warriors were trash anyways. But when LeBron joined the Lakers and that year with the play-in tournament, that grew my hate exponentially. I hate them. But Brooklyn Nets, dumpster fire. I mean, they can come back. It's only been 6 games for them, I think. They can come back. But, man, that Ben Simmons experiment is not going well at all. Poor KD. I mean, he and Kyrie are putting in so much effort, and they have such a trash team. Poor guys. Anyways, the Warriors, we're 3-4. It is what it is. But I think if we go into this week, let's see our schedule here. We got the Heat on Tuesday, Magic on Thursday, Pelicans on Friday. Out of those 3 games, I see us going 2-1 at best. And ever since last year where I doubted the Warriors, I'm trying to be more optimistic. I don't know if I am right now, but the Heat are sliding and sliding fast. Magic, that has to be a win. After we just lost to the Hornets and Pistons, that has to be a win. If that's not a win, something dramatic has to be done. A shakeup has to happen if we lose to the Magic. And then the Pelicans, man, are they red hot. Even without Zion, they look like a cohesive unit. I don't think the Warriors were ready to be defending champions again. 2015, they win the title. So then you go into the 15-16 season as defending champions, and you shock the world by starting 24-0. That was because Steph had something to prove. That is what sparked that. And then the rest of the team was obviously very cohesive. But then you go and lose the finals. You grab KD. And from that point on, being a defending champion is not as hard because you have two, back-to-back MVPs pretty much in Steph and KD. And so that's why I say I don't think we were ready to be defending champions again. We were such a young team. Other than Steph, Draymond, and Klay, we were such a young team. And we were catching teams not necessarily by surprise because, like I said, we had Steph. And whenever Steph is on a team, you're going to game plan according to him in terms of the other team defensively to us. But this year, I think Steph is obviously still working his butt off, scoring 30 a night pretty much right now. But the rest of the team, even Jordan Poole, who's been scoring really well, our defense is our number one problem. We can shoot the lights out most nights. We'll have the occasional off shooting night. But our defense is fouling like nobody's business and giving up 70 points in a half almost every single game. I don't know if I've ever seen that out of the, modern day Warriors. I don't think I have. Usually we are the ones doing that. And so I think that's where we start, looking at the defense. And like I said, Tuesday we have the Heat. Thursday we have the Magic. If we lose to the Heat, we can say, hey, look, just a week ago we beat them. So, we're just having an off week. We're on a 3-game losing streak if that happens. But regardless of win or loss against the Heat, if we go to Orlando and lose, something dramatic has to happen. I'm not talking a trade. I'm saying maybe shake up the center spot. Maybe put Kuminga in as like the first man off the bench to bring his confidence up. Maybe bench Moody. I don't know what else I can say on Moody. I know a lot of people like him. I don't. I hope he proves me wrong. But let's talk a little bit about the whole NBA and what we're seeing. Let me go to the standings here. In the Eastern Conference, you've got the number 1 seed Bucks, still the only undefeated team in the NBA. Then we got the Cavs, Celtics, Hawks. I don't think any of those are surprise teams. All of those teams have played 6 games, and I don't think there's any surprise there. Then you have the Knicks, and they're 3-3 at the 5 seed. I think what we're learning this season is that there's a lot of parity. I think we learned that the year Steph came back, so the year we lost in the play-in. And then we also realized it last year. But this year is different. Like, I don't know. everybody has a couple bad losses other than the Bucks and maybe the Trailblazers and the Jazz. We'll get to the Western Conference in a second, but I don't know. A lot of parity, and it's going to even itself out. If you're doubting right now, the Jazz, good. They are not going to be in the playoffs. They're not. I've seen way too many times Kelly Olynyk disappoint. So, and I know I have a few Jazz fans here. I know they listen. The Jazz are still terrible, and you want to be terrible. You want Victor Wembanyama. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then that means you're not watching the NBA too much. So I'll explain. Victor Wembanyama, I think he's like 7'1", maybe even taller than that. He's a French basketball star, and he will be the number 1 pick this offseason. But the Jazz, let me check here. The Jazz are 5-2. They just beat a Grizzlies team without Ja Morant, but things will even themselves out. Let's look at the bottom of the Eastern Conference. Outside of the playoff picture, so number 9 seed, you have the 76ers, Bulls, Pacers, Heat, Pistons, Nets, and Magic. The Nets are 1-5. Well, let's see. What is the biggest surprise here? I think there's 2 of them. The 76ers, who are kind of coming back into what they were shaped to be this offseason. And the Nets. Wow. I don't know what Ben Simmons is doing on a basketball court. Even his assists, which he predicates his game off of, are not that impressive. Just saying. Not to hate on him, but I am hating on him. Let's move to the Western Conference to wrap up the episode. Number 1 seed, we have the Blazers at 5-1. Then we have the Suns, Spurs. That's not going to last long. Jazz. Spurs and Jazz right next to each other. Nuggets, Pelicans, who are only 4-2. I thought they were a little bit better. Grizzlies, Timberwolves, OKC, and then the Warriors. Warriors are 10th seed right now. And it'll get better. We are going through some growing pains right now, but it'll get better. And then we have the Mavericks, Clippers, Kings, Rockets, Lakers. 2 of the more shocking teams. Well, Lakers aren't shocking. We knew that. But Clippers, a lot of people had them out to be really good this year. I have Paul George on my fantasy team, and he was doing really well to start the season. And now he is just stinking it up. But also his co-star, Kawhi. What's the point of even paying a player like that? Kawhi, I know he was load management in a Spurs uniform, even a Raptors uniform. But, dude, you've been off for the past year and a half. What are you doing? Get in the game. You're going to get injured again if you don't play. Because once you step on a court after being away for 10 days, you're going to be sore, and then boom, you're going to stretch something the wrong way again. I don't understand. But I know Ty Lue is a good coach, Tyronn Lue. But I don't believe in the Clippers for a second. All right, guys. That's it for today. Let's go Warriors. Should we start a petition to have Moses Moody benched? I don't know. Is it that serious? You tell me. Guys, I appreciate everything you do on social media, listening to this podcast. Please share it with your friends. That's how we get more listens. That's how I'm able to keep doing this. And, reach out to me if you want to debate about Moses, Moses. All right, guys, stay cool.